From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. President of the Republic of Korea Lee Jae Myung has arrived in Beijing for a state visit. This marks his first visit to China since taking office and comes at a moment when China-ROK relations are drawing renewed attention. Again, at a backdrop of geopolitical uncertainties, economic headwinds, and evolving security dynamics. As two close neighbors and major economic partners, China and the ROK share deep roots in trade industry and so on, while also navigating differences in a rapidly changing geopolitical environment. How will this visit play an active role in promoting the further development of the China-ROK strategic cooperative partnership? And how can the two sides use this opportunity to strengthen mutual trust, expand practical cooperation, and contribute to stability and prosperity in the region? To explore all these questions and more, we're joined today from Seoul by Choi Jin Baek, Research Professor of the Center for Chinese Studies at the Institute of Foreign Affairs and National Security. Also in Seoul, we have Kim Haesun, chairperson of Taiya SI Partners, a strategic negotiator and planner. In Tokyo, we have Emanuel Yi Pastreich, president of the Asia Institute. And last but not least, we have senior research fellow Rong Ying from the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome to all of you. Professor Rong, how important do you think this state visit is in advancing China's relations with the ROK?
Yeah, it is important. I think it is the first and foremost. It's the first ever state guest visited, received by President Xi for the new year, for the year 2026. And it is also, of course, a reciprocal visit in some sense within 2 months after President Xi's state visit to Seoul, to ROK back in October, end of October and beginning of November. And so I think the visit and of course the relationship and the region and the world at large, if I can say, arguably at a very critical and fast changing sort of moment. So I think the visit certainly helps maintain the positive momentum as what we call the restoration or stabilizing the relationship. But most importantly, as we have seen that the two leaders have worked together to formulate their future directions by providing strategic guidance and also roadmaps to further consolidating, expanding, deepening, and equally important to manage and strengthen strategic communications.
This is a very important relationship, trade-wise and also in terms of people-to-people exchange. Let me turn to our guest in Seoul, South Korea. Mr. Choi, how do you look at the importance of this visit? How is Korea watching this state visit conducted by President Lee in China?
Well, I think President Lee's visit this time is very important to improve Korea and China's relations, because there are many Korean people expect to improve two nations' bilateral relations. But as you know, there are some other factors that does not belong to two countries, but that make the two countries' relations a little bit problematic. That's why we had almost a decade without any state visit. But last year, President Xi visited Korea in APEC Gyeongju meeting, and after that, we used this time to visit China to improve our relations. And I want to just tell you the basic idea of President Lee's diplomatic scheme. He mentioned about pragmatic foreign policies, and it is not clear what does that really means. But from this visit, we had a chance to tell the entire world what kind of ideas Korean government has in terms of pragmatic foreign policies, which means even though there is some disagreement between Korea and China, but if there is some room, we can cooperate and improve the relations that we want use that kind of cooperative room to improve two countries' relations. That's why this time, even though there is no joint communique from both leaders, but there are 14 MOU. And I think these 14 MOUs represent in a practical way how China and Korea can improve some in a very detailed matters. We can improve two countries' relations. So I think this visit is really important to show how Korea and China improve two countries' relations in the future.
Right. Let's not forget this is the first visit to China by a Korean president, by a South Korean ROK president in a long time, because the previous president of the ROK skipped a state visit to China that eludes the former leader of the ROK. Now, Ms. Kim, what tone do you think President Lee's visit has set for the future of China-ROK relations?
Yes, as other panels had already mentioned, it has been 7 years since the top leaders of China and Republic of Korea has met, and from 9 years past for the Korean president state visit to China, and many economic leaders in Korea has not been having a meaningful discussion, especially for the past 3 years. So the cluster, especially deep tech area and diplomatic relationship and the peaceful settlement in the Korean Peninsula, all these key issues and are outstanding at the moment. So it is very important and meaningful timing for the two leaders to meet this time, especially at the beginning of this year when the world environment is moving very fast and all the methods are no longer valid at the moment. So in order to advance the strategic cooperative partnership between the two countries, this is the right timing for the two summits to meet, and which will follow by other people of the two countries to exchange ideas and collaborate together, not only in the economic field, but in many other like intangible fields like culture and service sector.
Certainly, there's a great appetite for K-pop here in China, and the Chinese cultural elements are seen on the street of Seoul, Labubu, to say the least. Certainly, it is a hope that there can be more people-to-people engagement between China and the ROK. Now, talking about the world environment, Ms. Kim has brought up, Emanuel, we have the president of the ROK, President Lee Jae Myung, visiting China. We also have what perceived to be an intensification of China-U.S. rivalry. We also have, the United States of America strengthening its hands in Central and South America by basically abducting and capturing the president of Venezuela. How do all these factors play into the dynamics of Beijing and Seoul, in particular the state visit by President Lee in China, meeting with President Xi?
Right. Well, that is the essence of the issue. The state visit this time was about normalizing procedures for cooperation between Korea, South Korea, and China, having regular meetings on a whole range of different topics, which have been essentially blocked out, especially by the previous administration, which had taken this extreme turn to sort of centralizing everything around the United States and American concepts of security and diplomacy. This particular visit at the beginning of the year, very significant, has to be seen in the context of the decay of institutions in the United States. The recent Trump administration whether it's the decision of Donald Trump to put his face on a dollar coin, or his decision to unilaterally attack Venezuela to ignore international law, or for that matter in diplomacy. We can contrast the way in which President Lee Jae Myung showed these treasures that he brought from Korea, ancient porcelain, with the way in which he presented Donald Trump with a crown to symbolize he was like a king or emperor. So there's a much more subtle relationship, much more practical in the sense of working level cooperation between South Korea and China, and I think that's positive. But it also is informed by the breakdown of governments in the United States. The United States State Department has fired 4,000 or more people, no longer has expertise, no longer has people who speak Korean or Chinese. So that factors into this ongoing transformation of the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be some Korean-speaking people in the State Department policy planning team and the White House East Asia Affairs team, some former China correspondent in the previous Trump administration, but unfortunately, a lot of those folks are gone. Now, right. Chairman Rong Ying, let me ask you about this. If you look at, if you zoom in on the details of this visit, agreements signed in artificial intelligence, in green industries, and in the silver economy industries also. President Lee is set to visit Shanghai and pay respect to an independence movement activist, honoring the shared memories of China and Korea. What do these arrangements tell you about the direction of relations of the two countries?
Yeah, I think it certainly means a lot. I mean, about the future directions and the priorities of the two countries or the two presidents would like to focus on for its future development. And certainly first and foremost, economic trade or pragmatic cooperation is very much emphasized, not only because of the 14 MOUs and agreements that have been signed during the visit, but also I think the first ever business forum in 9 years which brought together over 600 business representative, business leaders from the Korean side, ROK side. There are over 200 business leaders, including these big major conglomerates like Hyundai, SK, Samsung, and others. While their Chinese counterpart too, that meeting together, they signed over 30 MOUs, so which very much I think tells the story. And that takes place, it is even more significant, takes place in the context that where China and ROK economic trade relations has undergone dramatic changes. I mean, facing up many challenges in terms of competitions. As President Lee said in his interviews, the relationship has transformed from a kind of horizontal cooperation to a vertical cooperation, to horizontal cooperation, which means there are more competitions than cooperations. Having said that, I think these agreements and I'm always seeing that the two sides are determined to look for creative ways to manage their cooperation, competition, but the most important to pursue a creative way for cooperation. So these agreements, I think an MOU is seen that tells a lot for the creativity and I think proactiveness of the two sides, including the business communities. I mean, in particular for their sort of enthusiasm, for their efforts to push for cooperation despite the competitions and also the changing dynamics of the context where geopolitics, over securitizations, and if I may, that the third country factor disturbance from the United States and others.
Yeah, if you look at the trade, since the early 1990s when China also recognized the ROK, On top of the DPRK, bilateral trade was $6.5 billion, and now it is almost $300 billion. And Mr. Choi, let me ask you about this. What areas do you think hold the most promise for China and ROK in advancing their economic relations going forward?
Well, I think there are many rooms that we cannot still see the actual, practical areas that can be cooperate together. But what is clear now is China and Korea, in economically and technologically, we need to cooperate closely because the challenge we are facing is really big, and there are a lot of uncertainties. So without close cooperations, then we cannot make the future more bright. So I think Korea and China need to cooperate in economic and advanced technological areas. But here I really want to point out one thing, because there are many economists, they think China want to develop its advanced technology sectors by itself without any kind of close economic relations with other countries, because China think the way to develop its economy depends on whether China can develop its technologically competitive sector. So which looks like China focusing more on its domestic technology sector without making some serious cooperation with other countries. So I think this kind of images make China's position a little bit weaker in the global societies. So what I want to tell you now is China need to use this the relations with Korea to improve the economic development and develop the new technology sector with Korea together. That make China's position much better in the global society. So I think we need to cooperate very closely in the future. That's the point I want to add here now.
Great. Ms. Kim, talking about technology cooperation, do you think the United States would allow the Republic of Korea, South Korea, to cooperate on a full range of products and services and R&D with China, given what's going on right now?
Since the President Lee has taken the government last year, and as you may recall, when we had the APEC summit meeting in November 2025, we had visitors from 21 countries, and including the CEO of the NVIDIA, Jensen Huang. He has committed 260,000 GPUs to Korea to make Korea number 3 in the world in the AI and deep tech area. And especially when the President Lee visited China this time, state visit, we have signed the MOUs of 14 different sectors, which covers not only the advanced technology areas, but environment, supply chain, and to healthcare and cultural sector. But this MOU may not be legally binding, but it's very important because MOU between the ministries, the ministers of both countries. So we say that the devil is in the detail, which means that we have to make an action plan from now on to implement what we have signed and what we have discussed. So I think there is a very complementary role between China and Korea, and China is already advancing in many different technology sectors, but together with collaborating with Korea in the complementary area, I'm sure that the power will become double and much more powerful to advance into the global market.
Well, Emmanuel, do you see complementarity between China and the ROK in navigating through the geopolitical turbulence and really trail a new blaze in industry cooperation, trade, and standard setting?
Right. Well, there's enormous potential for cooperation, and this particular set of meetings with this orientation toward very specific issues, fishing, engagement with North Korea and its nature, the control of the ocean and how it would be through mutual discussion, standards and regulations would be set, creating an independent dialogue on maritime and ocean issues, and setting up annual meetings. All of this was in some ways the opposite of what's happening in the case of the United States, in which the United States is increasingly isolationist, not engaged in these sorts of cooperation or discussion. And I think it's particularly important the way in which Korea and China are engaging, South Korea, engaging in this potential for substantial long-term planning. And that's, I think, the underlying goal here. It's not, art of the deal, bring everyone together one time and decide everything, but have regular meetings by lower level people, vice ministers and below, and take on very concrete issues. And that's the opposite of what was happening under the Yoon administration and continues under Trump, which is sort of like China's this threat of military threat, AI threat, without looking at the details of how what the challenges that all of humanity faces, and also what the specific issues are for Korea, for South Korea, for the Korean Peninsula, and for China.
But Emmanuel, do you expect a domino effect of sorts, given what's going on in the Western Hemisphere? America certainly, strengthening its hands, like we said, in, through Venezuela, threatening Cuba and Colombia and other countries, Ecuador, we don't know. Do you see that also happening, if not now, but in the foreseeable future with America's allies in Asia-Pacific, including the ROK?
Well, I have no doubt that there are some people in Washington, D.C. who have such an idea in their minds. However, it seems very unlikely that the United States is going to be very successful in this particular effort. In the case of South America, I mean, let alone what's happened in Palestine, the United States is facing enormous odds. And the bottom line, as an American deeply concerned about the United States and its relationship with Asia, the bottom line is that Korea, South Korea, and China have invested heavily in basic science, in educating the population in science and mathematics so that they have the basic working ability. And the United States is basically relying on technology based on science research from 30 years ago. And the Trump administration has cut back. So in some ways, our greatest hope is that China and South Korea and other nations of Asia can cooperate in science research to better the environment for humanity as a whole.
Well, Chairman Rong, how do you see America as a factor in affecting China-ROK relations in the foreseeable future?
Well, definitely, I think the United States is the most important third-party factor, if I can say. After all, I mean, ROK has a security alliance with United States, and China and United States relationship is also one of the most consequential relationships. So China and the U.S. relationship, and I think both China and the United States are going to be factors. I mean, ROK has to be managed. But I think while we are, debating about what the U.S. factor is going to play out in this equation, some lessons in the past should be learned. I think as far as ROK is concerned, I believe that how to ensure, as a sovereign state, to pursue, in this case, President Lee's sort of doctrine or ideas of pragmatic diplomacy will serve both, the fundamental interest of ROK, and in a sense that to have a balanced sort of relationship vis-a-vis China and the United States. After all, I think China and the United States also are working together to seek for a stable relationship. And this is very much related to the sort of expectation from the Chinese side on the question of core, related to Chinese core interests, and of course, arguably for Koreans' core interests. So how to manage this new new development and of the or policies as a result of the U.S. factor is very much important thing. Lessons learned. So all in all, the Chinese are expecting that the disturbance of third party factors should not be disturbed the steady and stable development of the relationship.
Yeah, sure. Lessons from history should be learned. Now, Mr. Choi, how do you look at this, American or America factor in China-ROK relations? How is Seoul balancing its relations between Beijing and Washington?
Well, I think the China and United States relations is most important factors in global politics nowadays. That's for sure. But it's really unpredictable about outcome. How the Trump's invade Venezuela this time effect in its global society. We think need some time to understand what's really going on. But I want to just point out one thing here, because I think Korea and China, we have a very close strategic understanding, which means China oppose new Cold War and bloc formation in these areas. And Korea also understands that. And Korea want to improve Korea and China's relations and make these areas free from new Cold War influence and bloc formation process. I think that could bring more peaceful environment in this area, and that will provide us more opportunities about economic development in this region. So there is a very close strategic understanding between Korea and China, and we have really believe in China's that position.
Well, about 1 minute left, Ms. Kim. How is South Korea ROK walking the thin line, balancing its relations between China and the United States?
Yes, at this moment, both China and Korea is facing a strong pressure from the U.S. In terms of export tariff and goods exporting to U.S. And this is one of the key reasons that can push back the economic growth of both countries. And it is somewhat against the spirit of fair trade. So Korea has been, between Korea and China, we have been depending upon China in export trade almost to 25%. But now it has shrink back. Very smaller trade is between Korea and China. But it is right time. It is about time that we increase that to the normal and normalize export trade between the two countries.
Normalizing trade is very important, Ms. Kim. I'm sorry to cut you, but that's all the time we have for this live broadcast. Thank you to all the guests joining us at this hour. They'll do it for this edition of The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing.